Movie star Mel Gibson is a regular visitor to the Stem Cell Institute. He has treatments for a shoulder injury, and he's become an advocate of stem cell therapy. Mel's father, Hut Gibson, had his life transformed by going to Panama. His treatment pulled him back from the edge of death, aged 92. 7 years later, he's thriving.
Well, he was pretty old. He was 92, and he wasn't doing too well, and I took him to the Mayo Clinic in Arizona, and they said, "You better leave him here. He's going to be dead." And I'm like, really? So they kept him there 10 days, stabilized him, identified a number of problems, just wearing out, the kidneys, he had some congestive heart stuff and lung stuff, and various other things. His hip was, hurting. He was not ambulatory, and he was in a lot of pain and pretty listless and sick. Night, what do they call it? Night terrors, or where he wasn't quite lucid. But all this stuff was draining his energy and affecting his mind, and it was the full kind of old indignity, the 92 years of age. So I figured, if he could just get his hip under him and get moving again. And they said, well, no, you shouldn't really. He's pretty old to be doing an operation like that. The recovery it'll take so much for him to recover. He'll probably that might take him out. I'm like, well, we can't do that. And then my brother said, look, why don't you try? I got this website of this adult stem cell thing. I'm like, what adult stem cells? Yeah. So I asked a doctor friend of mine, what he thought about that. And he says, stay away from those guys. It's unproven. He's like, it's, down in Panama, it's lepers and banana boats and three-legged dogs. And I'm like, well, you're exaggerating. And it turns out that he was. But I said, look, can we talk to these guys? He said, I'll talk to them. So I got this friend of mine, Brad, who was the doctor at Mayo. And we spoke to them for an hour. And it was interesting because he asked them questions I never would have thought of. I mean, what is a mesenchymal cytokine? Out of sight, out of kind. I don't know from nothing. So he's talking, and then I asked him to translate all this, and he translates it in a pretty good way. He puts it into the sort of vernacular for me, and we're talking about it back and forth. And he says, let's call him again. And we talked to him for another hour. And we talked to Neil Reardon and Jorge. And they both talked to us on the phone, and afterwards the guy said, it doesn't sound crazy. I mean, he says, it sounds kind of amazing. And he says, look at your dad. What do you got to lose? So I put him on a plane and got him down here. And, we shot him in the hip. And they thought they had to do 2 hips. So they had enough for 2 hips, but it was so much, but they put double the amount in 1 hip. And then, of course, they just dropped some into his bloodstream, like 100 million cells or something like that. So, but every ailment that this man had kind of righted itself, and pretty quickly, too. And he started walking without pain, and he became back to his lucidity, and his kidneys were okay, and his heart and his lungs, and his eyesight got better, and he even started getting little pigments in his hair and stuff. It was insane.